OpenLine, talking about open records in Tennessee, public records laws. We have with us Deborah Fisher, the executive director of the Tennessee Coalition for Open Government. Body cameras on police officers. That has been a big new area, and the legislature dealt with that area this past session, right? They did. And so what's the law? What came about this past session? Right. So there's been a lot of discussion about body cameras. They're still new in some cities and counties. Sheriff's departments, police departments are buying them. And so there was a concern. So what it does is it creates a lot of government records. I mean, video is a government, anything created in the transaction of government business is a government record. So this video is now a public record. So there was concern about privacy of individuals. Obviously, if a police officer is going to have their camera on all the time, they're going to sweep up a lot of information and a lot of footage. And what happens to that? Who can see that footage? So, you know, we have advocated that there should not be an exemption to the Public Records Act that reduces the accountability. So if something on the body camera, really what the body cameras record that are of interest to the public in terms of accountability is what police officers do. Right. And you know how they're interacting with citizens, and especially when there is a question about that, or you know, in the most awful situation when there is a death or an injury of someone. Right. So anyway, but the legislature, the General Assembly was concerned. So what they did, what the law is, and that was passed this session, was they made confidential any video of a minor that is shot within K through 12 school. They made confidential video shot inside hospitals and nursing homes and other similar medical facilities. And they made confidential video that's shot inside a private residence if there's no crime being investigated. So if a crime was being investigated in that house, and that footage would not necessarily be confidential. The important thing to know about footage from body cameras is it's also subject to what they call the ongoing investigation exemption. So if police want to withhold it because it's part of an ongoing investigation, they can. They don't have to, but they can. If the investigation is closed, then it could still be withheld with those under those circumstances. So if there is a situation out in public, if they're wearing a body camera and they encounter a car, it happens on a road, and there's, you know, it happens not in a residence, at a school or in a hospital, is that public? Essentially it is. And I think the concern was that that all of this footage was somehow going to be obtained, you know, or there would be these huge requests for all this footage, but that hasn't really been the case in Tennessee. I mean, they aren't seeing a load of requests for this footage, and also there's something in our public records law that protects against that. If you make a request for a public record, you have to be specific enough about what the record is so that the custodian knows what to retrieve. So you can't make such an overly broad request that it doesn't identify the record. Right. You can't say all body cam video from Metro Police for last month. You couldn't make a crazy request. I guess you could probably make that request. Well, maybe you could. That would be insane, though. That would be a huge amount of data. Yeah, it would, and there would be a lot of effort to reduce that. To take out the things that are then exempt. That are exempt, right. Other states have much more restrictive laws when it comes to body cameras. So in that case, I know North Carolina, a neighboring state, has a much more restrictive policy. So how do you feel, as somebody that advocates for open government, open records, how do you feel about the policy that came out in regards to body cameras? I mean, there are some issues with what was passed that might have wished were different, but actually I was pretty pleased that it wasn't so broad and shutting down access to footage. I don't think this issue is going to go away. I think there could be some more things, but what happened in some other states that did not happen here was exempting, you know, all footage, you know, inside a private residence or something like that. And our argument all along has been
you know, we're not interested in invading the privacy of individuals, but when you shut down access to something that might show what law enforcement did, that has to do with accountability of government. And we felt like, you know, whatever happened, that needed to be preserved. That's really our interest.
And I'm looking through the list here that I guess you wrote of changes to the public records law this past session, things that were dealt with. Proposed economic development contracts. We have definitely tried to get information about economic development incentives that are given out by you know, governments to private business, and that's always hard. So I don't know the answer. I guess I haven't read all of it. What happened this session with proposed economic development contracts?
Okay, so the thing to know is the state ECD already has an exemption that allows them to keep confidential economic development contracts until after they're signed. And so that's a pretty stiff exemption, but you can see them after the state enters into them. At the local level, the economic development contracts are voted on by a governing body. It's not what happens at the state for most situations. So we had sort of a perennial call from local and state governments that, hey, you know, if their argument was that if we're working on an economic development contract to lure company X here, well, this town in Georgia can make a records request and see everything that we're working on and then steal it away. I haven't ever really bought into that argument, because I feel like the company itself, if they wanted a competing offer, they would share what a city might be.
Right.
But that was what they said, that they needed the same confidentiality. So the General Assembly did pass an exemption that allows them to keep confidential sort of while they're working on it, but as soon as that contract is presented to any member of the governing body in advance of the vote, that then is accessible to the public. And also there's language in that exemption, and we worked with the sponsor to get this language in the exemption that says that the governing body must proactively make available or inform the public of the contract before a vote, must fairly inform the public of what's in there. And I think that's important, because what we used to see on government agendas is, you know, a vote, but it wouldn't say what it was for. It might even have a code name, so you didn't even know that they were going to vote on a multi-million-dollar economic development grant. So now they can't do that anymore. They have to say what they're going to vote on.
That's nice.
That's good.
So they have to say what they're going to vote on. That's
yeah,
great.
Well,
all right.
I can't code it.
Well, we're going to take a break. Then we'll come back. We'll wrap everything up. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.